understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
I'm Sam. I study language and culture.
And as we begin each week, we ask ourselves, what have we been focusing on, or what has been gaining our attention? And so, Samantha, this week, what is gaining your attention?
The Epstein files.
Oh my, of course. Yes. That is.
Yeah, the Epstein files. We don't have to go into detail. Everybody knows. Oh, I got a piece of hair in my mouth. But I do want to read something from Luke chapter 12. That has never before meant anything to me, but now I really like it. He's talking about the Pharisees and their hypocrisy, and he says, "Nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. Therefore, whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light, and what you have whispered behind closed doors will be proclaimed from the housetops."
Ooh.
Hold on. I like a. Of course, I'm on screen doing this, but go ahead and talk. I got it. There was a piece of mouth on my hair, a piece of hair on my mouth.
Yeah, so I think everyone is concerned, or at least they should be, about the continued unfolding of the Epstein files. And then your reading from Luke's gospel kind of clarifies that. And it also makes me think about one of the two traditional confessions in the Lutheran Church, the one that we're actually using right now, which is, I gotta think about this. Almighty God, to whom all desires are known, and from whom no secrets are hid.
Yeah. So just really quickly, the Epstein files, there's no silver lining here. That's not at all how I'm trying to paint this. There's no silver lining. But there is a collapsing of the two sides politically happening. And I told Dillon this right before the episode, but I just want to say it here, and then I'll ask you what you've been giving your attention to. But there are many conservatives who have come out and said, I was wrong about Trump, as they should be right now, right? And there are also many liberals coming out publicly and saying, oh, all those conservative, wacky conspiracy theories that we were like, you're crazy, I was wrong, right? So both, and those are just two examples, but there's so many. I think a lot of people politically right now are like, ooh, I've been wrong about some stuff. I've been right about some stuff, but I've been wrong. And there's a collapsing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Again, not a silver lining, because the story has no silver lining of what these people of power have done and been doing. But something interesting is unfolding, and we'll see where it leads us. Dillon, what have you been giving your attention to?
I've been giving my attention to, so we're still in the midst of winter, but spring is coming. And so I'm kind of, so Christmas is over, and this kind of in between time, in between Christmas and Lent and Easter, I kind of asked myself, like, what is the point of this time? There's not really too much going on. What is the point of this time? Kind of January, February, late January, February, early March stuff. And so I kind of get a little like wonky as to like, what's going on? I don't mind winter, but I'm ready for it to end. And so what I've been paying attention to is what will this spring bring for us?
Yeah, it's a question of longing. I'm done. February 1st, I'm done with winter. I feel like January, I can kind of tolerate it. The holidays are behind us. Then February hits, I'm like, okay, I'm done. But I feel like if spring peeked through in February, the longing hasn't quite awoken in me yet. And I feel like
Yeah.
spring isn't good without the longing. So we need a cold, dark February, March, a little bit of April to really be like, I wanted this. Thank
Oh
you.
no, right.
Here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's this in between time. I've been thinking about this in between time, and I'm a person prone to anxiety, and always like kind of a little bit of a nervous Nelly, and I don't like to fill my brain too much with things that make me make me more anxious, and so this in between time has kind of been. I asked myself the question like, what is this? What should I do? But then I'm also reminding myself that I'm slightly enjoying it because there's this time to kind of just reflect a little bit
Yeah.
on what's to come. So that's not a very concrete thing about what I'm been thinking about.
No, but I do think it's a question everybody's asking themselves. Like, I mean, I was talking to my students today, this morning on campus about like every day I wake up and I think the world can't get crazier. And then I look at the news and it got crazier
Yeah.
every day. I think
Yeah.
everybody's asking themselves, what is to come? What's next? Where are we,
Mhm.
what is something is happening. Where are we going here?
Yeah.
Like, where are the leaders that are leading us out of this? Because this is insanity. Okay.
I do think, yeah, I think in terms of the Epstein files, I do think so it took 35, almost 40 years, maybe 35,
It's been going on since the 90s, so like 30.
so about 30 years,
I could be
25.
total, from what I understand, since the mid 90s. I don't know.
Sure, so 25, 30 years. Now, just think all of this heinous nonsense and disgusting behavior has been happening for 25, 30 years, some under the radar, some not. And then all of a sudden, I'm trying to make a point here. All of a sudden, 25 to 30 years of history, of nonsense, gets dumped into the media,
Into the
all
public's hands,
to the
not just the media,
public's
public.
to the public's hands all at once. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been dumped out. I think we should actually know more. But
There's a
that,
collective processing happening.
that's a lot. That's a lot. That's like waking up. That's like people that woke up and now there's 24-hour news.
Hmm.
And you
We can't
can't
keep up. We can't process it.
you can't
Yeah.
keep up. I mean 25, 30 years of history just in general.
Of documentation.
I mean takes people years to sift through and look at. And so I think there's going to be a lot of unfoldings within the next
Months.
weeks,
Yeah.
months, years, whatever.
Yeah, I heard a journalist say delayed justice is not denied justice.
Correct. Well, I think even with the what was it back in, what was it, 1999 or 2000, with the spot, I think it was Spotlight coming out of Boston with all the child sexual abuse coming out of the Catholic Church.
Mm.
I mean, that had been going on for, you know, 30, 40, 50 years, right? And then all of a sudden, it was all of it, or a majority of it, given at one time. And I'm not saying that, it should be given out in little increments. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying for the human psyche and brain and
Yeah.
processing.
I'm really grateful. I graduated high school and I turned 18 in 2008, and I really am grateful that Obama was my first president because it felt like that was one of the last times of normalcy, the 8 years of Obama. It felt, people agreed and disagreed, but it felt, I don't know if normal is
Yeah.
the right word, but it felt manageable. And of course, 2016 comes along, and then things just have gotten real crazy. And I think about my college students who I teach who are like 18, 19 now, and they're just coming into their voting maturity and what that must be like. And sometimes I just want to tell them, like, it wasn't always like this. This is uniquely crazy. I don't know if it will always be like this either,
Right.
but it wasn't like 2008 and 2012. Voting in those years felt different. It felt more noble.
Well, yeah, and I
Oh.
even think about the people who were running. I mean, I remember John McCain in 2008, the Republican candidate
Mhm.
for president. Um, when President Obama was being called out as a Muslim and all kinds of heinous things, it was John McCain
Who stood up
who
for him.
stood up for his opposition, uh, for the opposition candidate, and said, "This is untrue. This is
Mhm.
unkind behavior to a respectable man. We disagree on policies and the way of governing, but this man is a good man." And even Mitt Romney, he wasn't my favorite either, the best. But I mean, put Mitt Romney or John McCain up against some of these other characters, and not to get into politics, but and even some of the Democrats these days. Um, I mean, it's just it really is a totally different world.
Yeah. All right, episode 68. We're talking about Serpent. This episode, I feel like it's going to be a little all over the place because there's so much and it's for sure not all encompassing. But let's just start with serpents, some main places where we find them in the Bible. They're all over the place. I want to talk about their symbolism and how they can be a lot of different things. And then I want to talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh and Genesis specifically, because when we think about the snake in dominant Christian discourse, Genesis is often where it comes from. All right, so serpents. First of all, serpents. This episode is about serpents. Doesn't always mean snakes, right? There's also creatures like dragons and sea monsters in many cultures and mythologies, not just Christian and Jewish stories, but all over the place, right? So there are also, you can find serpents in Revelation, obviously, right? Dragons are a big one. They're all over the place. Um, in Exodus chapter 4, we have Moses' staff becoming a serpent, right? So it's not, again, I just want to make the point, it's not just the snake in the garden. We see snakes all over the place, meaning all kinds of different things. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, in the wilderness, the Israelites are journeying. I just taught all morning, and it was a like speaking heavy day, and I'm tongue twistery today. So they were journeying through, and it said that there were serpents in the desert, in the wilderness. In Isaiah, enemy nations are discussed using serpent and oh my gosh, imagery. John the Baptist in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, John the Baptist and Jesus, this is my favorite. They refer to some religious leaders as brood of vipers, right? Vipers, which is a snake. And Jesus tells his disciples that they will tread on serpents. That's in Luke. In Revelation, Satan is compared to a serpent. Do you have any to add? Those are the big ones.
Just that I think it's Revelation 7. I actually didn't write this down. I don't think I did. Let me see.
General say Revelation, it's all right.
Yeah, um, something about trampling on the head of it. Yeah, the head of the serpent
Mm,
in
yeah.
Revelation.
So let's talk about the serpent. Let's talk about the snake, serpent, snake, but the serpent as a symbol historically. So in pre-biblical cultures, the serpent, we often think of the serpent today because of its poisonous. Not all snakes, but many snakes are poisonous, right? So we think of them as,
Hold on one second, please.
what's wrong?
Yes, Tabitha.
Oh.
Tabitha? What? All right, that's all right. Are you still watching the movie? Okay.
Life is in session here. So, in pre-biblical cultures, it wasn't just about like evil and poisonous. They often represented fertility or wisdom, and that actually makes sense. Fertility is like a birth, a rebirth. And snakes are not just poisonous; they shed their skin, right? So it's about this rebirth or this wisdom because they can kind of shed a part of them and be something new, right?
But also the connection to fertility too with serpents as snakes in particular, is that unlike many other animals, the birthing process comes through eggs,
Yeah,
and eggs have in most cultures been something of either new birth or rebirth or
yeah,
fertility, because eggs have mystified people forever. And so there's that.
yeah. And there's a god. I don't even know if I'm saying her name right. It's Ningishazida, and she was depicted with serpents and was strongly associated with cycles of death and rebirth and kind of like nature's fertility, right? So
Mhm.
again, I just want to make the point for everybody that serpents are not just evil poisonous. They're also kind of this beautiful like shedding of new skin, rebirth, cycle, like nature's cycles, all that kind of stuff.
They can also in a lot of cultures, they also bring quite a bit of wisdom. Um,
Yes.
but if you look at cultures that are connected with the coast or the sea, you will see that a lot of times sea serpents or serpents of the seas, whether that be snakes or other types of like lizard-like creatures,
Mhm.
they are not seen favorably as bringing help or protection or wisdom, but they're actually feared. They're deeply feared because during storms and other types of things, they bring chaos.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
these great sea serpents or sea monsters are something that are within the stories of literature, especially religious stories, that are something to be kind of to put at bay.
Yeah, well, they have a lot to do with death and renewal, and
Yeah,
sometimes people drop that renewal part. There is no
right,
renewal without death, right? But sometimes
right.
just put on the death part, like in a lot of interpretations of Genesis, it's just about like, oh, now there's death. People don't live forever anymore. There's death. It's also about a renewal, like, well, there's a new thing now. Um,
Right.
and we're going to talk about Genesis more, but in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, the serpent is often, I don't want to take this away, it's often used to signify deception and danger as well, but that is not the only symbol of them.
Yeah.
And so all of this is
And
to say that, go ahead.
no, I think there's a fun, speaking about words, because we talk about words on here, phrases. In the Hebrew Bible, there's this ancient sea serpent or a type of like serpent dragon type thing that God subdues, and the word for that is Leviathan, and that's always a fun thing to talk
That is,
about. This Leviathan brings chaos, and it has this battle with God, and God, obviously God wins, but this ancient sea serpent Leviathan,
that's good.
which is common in other ancient both religious texts and just general literature of these sea creatures.
That's good. I was gonna light my candle. I don't even know where my
Oh yeah, I don't.
is.
I have a. Oh, well,
That's right.
I have a candle lit
Behind you. There you go.
that
I don't
you
even know
actually
where my
lit.
lighter is, which seems like a problem in a house with children. I'll have to find that.
Well,
Yeah,
we have a candle lit just to
there
let
we go. So the serpent has nuanced symbolic meanings, and it's also used to convey judgment and healing. It has a lot to do with judgment and healing. And those two things might seem in our cultural understanding like they are paradoxes, but actually divine judgment is all theologically wrapped in divine healing and transformation, right? Judgment is not about sorting out who is good and bad. It has a lot to do with you becoming aware of the wrong that you have done, and who among us is not transformed once we become aware of the wrongs that we have done. Do you know what I mean? Like once I'm like, oh yeah, I messed up there. I'm a new person now. I see everything differently. I'm like, oh, I need to apologize. I need to take accountability of that. Do you know what I mean? So this judgment is not like you are good. It's not like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory with the bad egg. Like this is a bad egg. You go down to the furnace. No. Did I make that clear? Okay, good. So let's talk about Genesis. So this is all about snakes, and really the main part that I want to talk about here that I think is linguistically interesting is the symbolic meanings. There's so many. It's not just about danger. You look like you want to say something.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll get to it. And before we go here, I want to. There's this beautiful. I got this one. Put this together. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 10, verses 16, you find the total balance or juxtapositions of the both and here. It says Matthew's Gospel speaks about. We always think, usually, actually, most Christians think that serpents are evil or they're deceitful, and they can be that. There's no question. But Matthew's Gospel says, "Be wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove."
Yeah, there's a real wisdom thing there.
And similar to that, which you brought up in John's Gospel about Moses lifting the serpent up in the wilderness, that serpent brings healing, and it brings a person and it points them to Jesus. But yeah, it's a mixed review.
And the wisdom doesn't have that used to feel really like, well, how is a snake a symbol of wisdom? I don't really get that. But it actually makes such sense to me whenever you think about a snake is really known for shedding its skin, right? They shed their skin throughout their life, and then they become something. It's like a butterfly story, actually. Of this, like they become something new, the same but also new, right? So they shed their skin and become something new, and there's no other way to become wise. That's why a 15-year-old isn't a wisdom. You don't go to a 15-year-old for wisdom. You go to a 92-year-old grandmother who's had 6 kids and has watched her husband die. And like, that's the person in the village you go to for wisdom, because they've shed some skin. They have died and renewed a couple times, right? That's how you achieve. I don't even want to use the word achieve. That's how wisdom is distilled. There's no other way. So that's all, like death and renewal is connected to wisdom. Cool. So let's talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh is this story, and it actually predates the earliest biblical stories by about 900 years. And if you are interested in biblical scholarship at all, if you've ever read anything about biblical, like the Bible is literature, anything, you know that this is actually really important. And scholars talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh all of the time, because a lot of Genesis comes from the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? There's a clear link.
Really?
Or do you disagree?
I don't disagree.
So we just have to start there. There's actually this ancient Sumerian text, and this is important because Abraham actually comes from the land that the Epic of Gilgamesh comes from, right? So it makes sense that we have the Jewish people have inherited the parts of this story, and there are many, many similarities. So this text, Epic of Gilgamesh, that was written long before Genesis ever came into existence, has a goddess named Ishtar who had a tree of life. So if you know Genesis, ding, 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 right? That was guarded by a serpent, ding, 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 right? And if you think about this time period, books were not in circulation the way they are now. There was no Instagram where people were sharing stories 24/7. So the fact that there was this Epic of Gilgamesh story, and then Genesis 900 years later, there wasn't much noise or clutter in the literature world for them not to be a connection. Do you know what I mean? Genesis also, so both stories have a tree and a snake, a tree of life of sorts and a snake. the Epic of Gilgamesh, so in this story, he sees his friend die and decompose. So he is seeking eternal life. That's the premise of the story. And ultimately, a snake snatches eternal life away from him. Again, ding, ding, ding. In Genesis, a snake plays a role in Adam and Eve losing eternal life. So many interpret the serpent in Genesis, which is in Hebrew to be I'm not good with the Hebrew pronunciations. Nakash in Hebrew to be the devil. But this is really important. If you're somebody who reads Genesis and you're like, oh, the serpent is the devil, right?
That's not.
There's no biblical basis for that. There's nothing in Genesis that clearly states this. Later New Testament writers
Those connections
will go back and interpret the snake to be the devil. But the idea that the devil plays a part in Adam's sin wasn't clearly expressed until the 2nd century by Justin Martyr. So that's really important. And the choice to include a snake in the Genesis, I just always have to say this. If you are somebody who really believes that the first people were Adam and Eve, you can have that belief. I have no dog in this fight. But the fact that the snake is talking does clue us in to the fact that this is not a literally factually true story. Dillon's making faces if you can't see him. Thoughts on that? There's a talking snake in the story, and I think that always has to be addressed. That like maybe that means that we need to view this through another. This is not a historical account. This is a community of people who are trying to make a literary point about humanity. And we're going to talk about some of the ways we can read that story. I don't know. I'll tell you how I read the story, but this is not a factual. There's a talking snake. Let's just start there. There's a talking snake in the story. Thoughts, Mr. Epler, Reverend?
Yeah. The book of Genesis I would actually say all, if not most, of its beauty, Genesis 1 and 2, I don't think was ever to be taken literally.
Historically.
I should say historically. Yeah. It was to be it was a way in which people could understand that they come from a creator, from a God, and something happened, and it helps explain that. But a literal understanding of the beginning of an anthropocentric world, or to give the origins of the universe, no.
Well, and we have some other things. So let's talk about the language of it. Not only is there a talking snake, but because the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, is a Jewish text first and foremost. It was written in Hebrew, right? Something that's really, I mean, there's a lot of these in Genesis. Genesis is, I'm convinced, a poem. The genre of Genesis is poetry, right? A lot of metaphor, a lot of literary devices being used. Also a lot of alliteration and rhyming going on in Genesis. If you read it in its original language, ding, 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 right? People aren't usually writing down a historical account while trying to rhyme and have alliteration. And here's what I mean. There were many Semitic languages used, and the word in a Semitic language for, because again, this is a Jewish text, for snake is shivya, and Eve is Shaba. So whenever you read it, it's Shivya, Shaba, right? Like there's this linguistic, poetic thing happening when you're talking about the snake and Eve, right? They're trying to convey meaning through a beautiful poem. So again, not to mention some really obvious, like played out things, but obvious things that as soon as they leave the garden, they go into a community with a lot of people. So Adam and Eve couldn't have been the first people if it's like like they go and enter society with people.
Well, it's Adam and Eve. It's Adam and Eve. And then Adam and Eve have two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. And then they go to the land of Nod. Now, the land of Nod just means a place of wandering. But then they find a city where there's lots of people living there.
Yes.
So you find out very quickly that this is not a historic or a historic story about the first people, but it's about it's a poem and a myth with a capital with a capital M, that is trying to convey some truth about purpose and meaning, and about God creating something good. You get that after every part. God created it, and it was good, and it was good, and it was very good, right? And so they were trying to convey something like that. I also would say that if you're a person of the 21st century in 2026, I'm not meaning to be snarky, but if you think that Genesis is a literal
account of events,
account of the origins of the universe, or the kind of inception of humanity, you're going to have a very hard time. You're going to have a
trying to reconcile it all.
Reconcile all that, and you're definitely going to have a division between those stories and modern day science, because once again, you have to always go back. Speaking about the talking snake, the whole idea was it's to convey something greater, something more meaningful, for meaning and purpose, and you're really going to struggle with. You're going to create a division, and that's not what it was supposed to be. It was a story for the time. It was what people knew at that time, and we know much more now. And I think Samantha would too, that God continues to speak to people. And God speaks to us in stories, and God speaks to us through poems, and God speaks to us through science. And we continue to evolve as time goes on. And that doesn't make God not the creator, or meaning and purpose nothing. It just kind of expands the story. And
well, let's talk. Yeah, that's good. And let's talk about the snake in this story, the serpent, and how also, by the way, there's no apple listed in the Bible. It's a fruit. And we've really taken the apple and ran with it, but it doesn't specifically name it as an apple. So that's interesting.
Well, it also, yeah. And even in which is a typical Sunday school story about Jonah and the whale, which is also kind of close.
There's no whale.
There's no whale.
Fish.
I mean, maybe it was a whale, but it actually doesn't say whale. It means a big fish. It could have been a whale, but the original Hebrew doesn't say that it's a whale. And somebody might say, well, that's just semantics. And I would say, well, no, that was the knowledge of the understanding of the person of that time. And now we know that there are whales, and maybe it could have been a whale, but that's not. They probably didn't even know about what it might be. And so it's important to take it seriously, but hold it loosely. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And well, I want to go back to the serpent, because that's what this episode is about, because I can feel myself wanting to go in a lot of directions. But the serpent in the Genesis story, like Genesis chapter 3 especially, the serpent is called crafty and deceptive, right? So that's for sure part of the story. That doesn't mean that the serpent is operating under the personified devil or whatever. But there's a lot of ways to read this. I don't read this story, and many scholars don't read this story, but there's a lot of ways to read it, right? And the truth is, we can't go back. We don't even know for sure who wrote this down. Like, it's so... Who do you believe wrote this? Or are you just... I'm kind of opted out, like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Who wrote Genesis?
Yeah.
We don't know who wrote Genesis.
Okay.
I think I actually
have a theory.
Oh, well, I have a theory. We don't actually know who wrote Genesis. The traditional legend is that Moses wrote it, but now we know through historical study that Moses couldn't even write. Moses was probably dyslexic. That I think he was a great leader. I think he led the Israelite people into many good things, and his story is quite beautiful. But he was not an articulate writer. A historical articulate writer. So I don't believe that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, which would include the book of Genesis. we don't know exactly who the author is, and I think that there were multiple authors.
Yeah.
I think
That
that
seems to be the scholarly consensus
I
as
think there
well.
was a collection of probably scribal writers with multiple dictators. Because even in the Genesis story, the stories of creation, if you look at the Hebrew, at some of the manuscripts, earliest manuscripts that we have,
Very fragmented.
it's fragmented, and the two there's two different, and when I mean different, meaning like there's two different stories, but also when you look at them in their original language in the Hebrew, they are written grammatically different, and they've been fused together to kind of be these two things that go together, and you can piece them together, but they're actually two totally different things.
Yeah.
Trying to tell a similar story.
Well, some people read the Genesis story as woman, they really make some gendered generalizations here, which I'm not a huge fan of, but
Well,
woman sinned and she was deceived and she took Adam down with her, and then death came upon them and they were kicked out of the garden of perfection of paradise. And there you have it. That was the fall of man, and now that's why evil entered the world, and it's everything's been bad ever since. That has really taken hold for some number of centuries. That is not the way I read that story. That is not the way I was taught from all of my teachers and the people that I read. The way I find connection and meaning to that story. And again, I'm not really arguing that one is better or not. I don't know. And I think that if it can meet us a lot of places, as literature does, but I tend to read it. The serpent was trying to I actually am not really sure that I have worked out in my own intellect the serpent role, except that I think it's nuanced and there's some deception and wisdom and all of these things going on. But for me, it's really a story of there are some things that are above our pay grade. And it's not a curiosity. I don't even know if I can articulate this, so help me out, Dillon. But it's not a curiosity killed the cat kind of thing, because I love curiosity. But it reminds me a lot of the Tower of Babel, of this like you have all of this beauty around you. Like in my life, like I have a husband and children, and I am healthy right now, and I can like taste good food and move my body and smell things and go see different places. I have all of this at my fingertips. I'm in the Garden of Paradise, but I want that one thing. I want the knowledge of everything. And I feel like it speaks to humanity and where we are right now, of this like we want to know everything and everything and everything. AI and internet, and we want to know everything, and it ends up our own demise. I feel like it's almost a warning sometimes that not all wisdom is for you, not all knowledge is for you. And if you try to go after knowledge that isn't for you, it can be your demise, culturally or individually. Does that make sense?
oh yeah, it makes total sense.
And I think the reason I probably read that text that way is because I am prone to wanting to know everything, to the point that I stop living my life in paradise, in this beautiful life that I have. I get distracted because I'm like, I want to know everything. Let me just endless pursuit of knowledge, which
I
is
think,
fun and not bad, but sometimes it can end in my demise to the point where I ignore everything else.
yeah, I mean, the ancient people, whoever the authors, plural, were of Genesis and the first five books of the Torah, of the Hebrew scriptures, whoever they were, we could assume that they knew about this mixed review about serpents in the ancient world.
Mhm.
They would have known in their own culture what their own culture knew about serpents, whether it was a mixed review or not. They could have possibly known about other tribes or other groups that were near them that had certain understandings of serpents. And so to be naive and think that the authors didn't know that the serpent was a was a what was an animal that had a mixed review, I think is kind of inappropriate if you think that like they didn't, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, I think the serpent in Genesis, from what I was taught in grad school, was when you look at the story, a story that is telling you something greater about purpose and meaning and trying to give an account of a creator and a created world. The serpent is a literary device to ask one, meaning the reader, the question of who do you trust?
Yes.
It's a question of trust. And if the serpent has a mixed review, yes, the serpent can sometimes be wise, and the serpent can sometimes give wisdom, right? But the serpent can also create chaos, and the serpent can also it can draw a person away, right? You see the same thing with the Tower of Babel.
Yes. Those
God,
two stories feel so connected to me.
God is saying, trust me. I will lead you. It might not be easy. It might even be a little difficult. It might be a little hard, but trust me, I'm going to walk with you through this. Or are you going to try to climb the Tower of Babel and find out why there's all these different languages, and can you get to the top, and can you climb to heaven, and can you be there? And clearly I'm going on and on and on. But that these stories and these literary devices come back to one thing and one thing only, from what I believe and from what I was taught, is God saying, will you or do you trust me?
Yes. So it's essentially, and you know that I've been thinking about this recently, but for whatever reason, we were sent here to have a human experience, right? And if it is true, like I believe it is, that when we die, we merge back with our creator, whatever that means, we somehow are entered fully into the oneness and we experience an undeniable capital L love, peace, serenity, right? Of just this peaceful, I mean, people who die and come back to life talk about it all the time, of just this, like, I just felt so loved, so held, just pure love, right? And if we, even people who are just like meditating all of the time because they want to connect to it all the time, which, listen, I have that longing too, but we were sent here to be human, which means we need to, I mean, the mystics call it a separation. We need to be separated from God. So I feel like Genesis is also a story that, like, if you're so hungry for the tree of knowledge, you want to see things and know things as I, God, know them. But if you do that, then you won't be having a human experience anymore. I will just consume you. And that's not what you're here to do. You're here to be a human. So go
Right.
be a human and have this experience. Let your soul be shaped by it. And then one day you will die. You will leave this paradise and you will come be with me. You will leave this garden and you will come back and be with me. That's another way to look at it. I have one more thing to say. Can I say it quickly? So my absolute favorite way to read this story, and the one that makes the most sense to me, because again, I think there's a lot of ways you could read it. And the truth is, we don't know the authors. We don't know exactly. We can only interpret with what we've had. But it's a story about human consciousness, and it's a story about coming of age. It's a story about what happens as you mature through life, spiritually, emotionally, whatever. A child is born and they don't know much. But then you live this human life and you can't help it. You start to know things. You eat the apple, if you will. You eat from the fruit of the tree of life. You eat from the tree. You are lured there by people. You are brought there. There are snakes in your life, whether those snakes are deceptive or those snakes are wisdom, or a little bit of both sometimes. You learn things, sometimes too early. Some kids learn some things that I think should wait a little longer, sometimes too late. Sometimes people are not taught things when they should be, but you learn things that inevitably this human experience becomes less paradise and a little more nuanced and a little more, you can see some of the badness in there and the evil things in there, and you wake up and you know things. because you ate from the fruit, because such is life, such is maturity. So it's a story about human maturity, where as you grow up, it's almost like the garden is a place of pure innocence, and you can't stay there forever. You can't. You have to grow up, you have to wake up, and you have to realize you move beyond innocence, you know things, and now you're somewhere else. You're not in the garden of innocence anymore. Everybody starts there, beautiful, but then things happen to you because it's humanity. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I do. I do, and I even agree with that. I have two things. One kind of historical practical, and then another one that kind of piggybacks off of what you just said. The historical practical is that many people in the ancient world were consumed by two things. Number one was survival. And if there was a story or there was lore in their community about not doing something for the survival of them and their community, the warning signs in the ancient world, including not eating certain things that will make you sick and die, was a practice. Because unlike today, where we have modern medicine and doctors and professionals, they also had medicine people at that time. But when they learned from stories about eat this and not that, trust this and not that, that meant something,
That's
right?
interesting. That's interesting.
It meant something. And what will happen if you eat something and don't trust the story or the lore or the divine goodness of God, or however you want to look at it,
Something bad will happen.
something bad will happen. Either you will die completely, you will die a little bit, your whole community will die. And
Mhm.
ancient people knew it way more than we did. You do not want to become extinct. You want to live on, you want to progress to the next thing. They knew a lot about death, much more than we do, because there was death all over the place. So this is also an
Well, they knew a lot about death in that they were close to it,
yeah.
but we know a lot about death almost in a different way of like
Oh,
they
yeah.
they likely didn't know that their cells were replicating in a specific organ
Oh, well,
way faster than they should,
I
and
mean,
that's called cancer.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
there are parts of them that should be dying regularly, and it's not. It's just multiplying, and that's called cancer,
Yeah.
and it will kill
Yeah.
you, right?
Yeah. I didn't mean to construe those things,
Well,
but
I say that because I want to make a point that I
hold
also
on.
think, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just want to say that. So there was a historical practicalness also to not just the Genesis story about eating the apple, but also this idea of kind of communal. I don't want to call it a rule,
Like
but
a warning. It
but
is
a
like a
communal
warning.
warning, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
have that, and then
It's
this,
also really quick, just a general story about people trying to be like wrestling with what is death.
right?
That's what I wanted to say when you were saying like, yeah, they wrestle or they understood death. Yeah, they were close to death. They witnessed it a lot. They were around people who were experiencing it. But it was also just ancient people, much like we are today, which is like, why death? Why do we
Mhm.
die? Why do we lose people? Where did they go? What is happening? It's a
Mhm.
story about being kicked out of the garden. It's a story that makes sense of why don't we live forever?
Well, yeah, it's also a very normal story because, for instance, if you're a parent or a grandparent or any type of caregiver, this we know this to be true every time. If you were to just say just follow where I'm going here. If you were to say to your child, and we're using the literary figures of the book of Genesis. If you were to say to your child, well, just listen, full stop. Just listen to what the serpent has to say, whether it's good or bad. Just listen to it and just do it, and then see what happens. We would never tell children that. That we would never tell children that. That's like telling a child to just go put your hand on the hot stove. See what happens. Just go do it, right?
Don't
Just
understand what you're saying.
follow me.
Okay.
Just go do it, right? No. What we do is we tell people up front that you probably shouldn't touch that. And if you touch that, this is what's going to happen.
Mm.
We tell people up front, we don't try to trick people. God isn't in the business, I don't believe, of tricking people. So the authors of Genesis knew that God doesn't want to trick people. God wants to tell people up front that there are tricks in this world. Some of us will take it, some of us will not, most of us will. But we shouldn't just go for the trick right away. We shouldn't tell our child or anybody, just go touch the hot stove. So what we do is we say, don't eat the fruit. And
Don't listen to the snake.
Don't listen to the serpent. Do not eat the fruit. And if you do, these are some things that might happen.
Okay,
right?
so
Hold on. We say the same thing with children. Do not run across the road. Look both ways. Do not touch this hot stove, or these things will happen. Sometimes these things happen. And then there's things that happen after that. That doesn't mean that that person was bad or wrong or sinful, or what we could use all the language. It means that there is a remedy, even though there's something that we say don't do it, there's a remedy afterwards. Are you following me?
I'm having an epiphany. Or are you ready for it?
Hold on. Yeah. So what I'm saying
You just said yeah and you meant no.
So what I'm saying is, to piggyback off of your thing, you see this throughout cultures all the time. It is a saying no, knowing that a person is going to say yes, and then to have a remedy for it. But we don't start, or at least most don't start with the yes. Just go do it. Go do it. Drink the poison and see what happens. That's not where Genesis starts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the Jewish God, at least from how the people understand the Jewish God. And that's not how Christians understand God to be.
Right.
And so
it's if you do this, this is what will happen. And then whenever the person, like I'm thinking of our children right now, when they inevitably do the thing because they feel like I need to experience it myself, the consequence happens.
But there's a remedy.
And then they're brought back into the fold of like, I told you it would happen. Are you okay?
Right.
I'm still right here.
Right.
Now let's take care of this. Yeah.
So, and if you follow the Genesis story, you see what happens to the serpent in Genesis. You see what happens to the literary figures of Adam and Eve. And you see that Eden, or the garden, doesn't look all much the same, and that things happen. However, God doesn't fully destroy Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm.
God restores them and remedies them, right?
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't fully destroy. We could talk about this on a different podcast, but God doesn't even fully destroy the serpent figure.
Mm-hmm.
God corrects it. God puts it in line. God says you're now confined to do certain things. We're not going to let you run amok. But God doesn't destroy the serpent. Now we could talk about, will that serpent be destroyed forever and ever on a different podcast? But we're talking about the Genesis story, and we're talking about serpents. So
yeah. So can I tell you my epiphany? It's so simple. It's so simple. It's actually embarrassing how simple it is that I'm just like connecting it all. It's this Genesis story feels like to me like it's just telling us the same thing that the entire Bible, like the through line of the entire Bible is, don't trust that, trust God. Don't trust the knowledge that can come from the fruit of the tree. Trust God. Trust what God said. Don't trust, I'm going somewhere. Don't trust what the serpent is saying. Trust God. Trust what God said. In Exodus, I am the God of Israel. I freed you. You come with me. I have you. You come with me. Trust me every step of the way. I will part the sea. Moses will figure out this new society thing for you. I will be in the burning bush there when I will give Moses the commandments. Trust me. Get rid of those idols, get rid of the ram, get rid of the cow. That is what Egypt worshipped. You're enslavers. You trust me. Stop trusting those idols. Stop trusting the Pharaoh. And then you even get into the New Testament and it's Jesus over and over again. All of the language for Jesus, Son of God, is because the emperor was called Son of God. No, you trust God, the Father in heaven. That's why all of our creeds say the only God, the only Son of God, right? Because there is no other one. The whole biblical narrative is people over and over again trusting something else that isn't God, trusting politicians, trusting the snake, trusting their own pursuit of knowledge, trusting the Tower of Babel is a story of technology. Can we build this thing to get big enough that we are gods ourselves? Stop doing it and just trust that everything will unfold as it should, and then it can unfold as it should. But instead we're just like, no, we have to learn our own lesson. We have to taste the fruit ourselves, just like a child has to touch the hot iron themselves even though they were told it will hurt, and they have to do it themselves. And I think that it's almost, bear with me, tell me if this is very confusing, but you and I have been talking about this. I have been waking up to, like, I want to stay in a meditative, prayerful state all of the time because I want to be where the veil, not that there's a thin veil, but there is no veil. I have that longing. I want to experience the divinity right here, right now, all the time. But the message that I keep receiving is that no, you are here to be human. I am all consuming. God is so all consuming that you won't even have your human experience that you are here to have. So you can only see where God was. You can only see the burning bush that just was, that you can't, you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, and we can parcel out the Trinitarian understandings of this on a different episode.
Don't go
But
too far. I want to make my point.
I'm
So
not. I'm just saying that there are clear things that Jesus, the historic Jesus of Nazareth, is either recorded to have said or believed to have said by followers that has made distinctions between not meaning that the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are not equal, but distinctions in that, saying things like only the Father knows that.
right.
No one knows the time nor the place.
Yes.
Only the
Wait, I
Father.
really want to circle back before we go too far away.
Well, no, I'm just saying we that doesn't mean that the Trinity's not true, but there's certain things there.
I'm losing what I was going to say now. I knew I was going to lose it. No. I just have one more thing to cap it all off and I'm losing it because my brain is on fire today. About the distance. Oh, they were in the Garden of Eden, they're kicked out, right? It's like they're kicked out of paradise. That's the story. In Exodus, they're in exile. I feel like the whole arc of this isn't just me, other people have said this, but the whole arc of the Bible is what you were explaining, which is God says, if you do this, this is the harm that will come of it. Just trust me. And then humanity, God's people, the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, now even Christians, right? We screw it all up. We do what we told we weren't supposed to do, but the relationship is in the return. Over and over again, there has to be a separation because if there is no separation, there is no return. I think that parents probably know this well. Your children grow up and there has to be a separation. There has to be just a mild rebellion of like, I'm going to raise my kids different from the way you raised me. Oh, some people rebel in really big ways, right? And they won't talk to their parents for a couple of years, depending on what that relationship was. But there has to be a separation. That's why teenagers are so into their own identity and ego, because there has to be a healthy, this is getting real Freudian, but there has to be a healthy separation. And the same is true with God. For us to have this human experience, there has to be somewhat of a separation. There has to be a veil where we can still tap into divinity and experience it, but we can't be all consumed by it, because then we wouldn't be able to we'd only want that. And we wouldn't be able to have this human experience. So we have to be kicked out of the Garden of Paradise so we can go be human and see for ourselves and taste for ourselves. And the relationship with God is always in the return. If you're a parent and maybe your child in their 20s was like, hey, let's hang out and be friends, let's be close, right? There's like they left when they were teenagers and now they're coming emotionally back around when they mature. That feels true to me, that that's what the relationship with God is like, because the whole Bible tells that story over and over and over and over again of God's people ignoring God. Essentially shit hits the fan and it goes bad, and now they're enslaved again, now they're oppressed again because they didn't listen to God. And then God says, don't worry, teshuva, turn back around, right? Repent, right? So they repent, they turn back around, teshuva, they come back around, and it's always in that returning to God. That's where the juice is. It makes so much perfect sense to me. Does that make any sense to you, Dylan? What I'm
Oh
how
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And it starts
Absolutely.
right in Genesis when they're kicked out of the garden. It's like, yeah, because they had to do it themselves, there are consequences, and then they're reunited again. This is the whole arc, Old and New Testament.
And
Of
I think, yeah, and I think to kind of not sum it all up, but to
Did
make
I take us somewhere real wonky? I feel like I just rambled in a
no,
way. It's just something that's been clicking to me recently, and it makes sense to me. But if somebody 5 years ago spoke this way to me, I would have been like, what are you talking about? But it all is clicking to
well,
me.
sure. Um, I think it's important for this episode in particular when speaking about the word serpent and the culture around serpents or snakes or other types of things like that. It's important to hold both together that there are things that are good, like protection and wisdom and healing, but also chaos and danger and kind of this idea of knowledge at all cost without assistance.
Mm,
And I want to make a connection here. I'm not saying it's identical, but I want to make a connection here. There's been groups of people, including religious groups in particular, that have over the years, and Samantha might know where I'm going with this, but over the years have tried to, even myself, I'm really a culprit of this sometimes. We have wanted to, and I say we because I'm a part of this sometimes, we have wanted to tramp down language about snakes and serpents and devils and Satan and evil and all kinds of things like that because they have built cultural connotations that have driven people away, and rightfully so. However, every single time we try to either suppress that language or suppress the reality of those things,
mhm,
um, we just get a new devil. We
mhm.
just get a new Satan. We just get a new serpent. We just get a new Leviathan. We just get a
What do you
new.
mean?
What I'm saying is every time we think, oh, well, maybe we should just get rid of this language and the messy.
Like, where does it pop up new?
Well, it pops up new with Jeffrey Epstein.
I don't understand.
So every
We're
time
not
we
calling him a devil. No
no,
one's
no, no, no,
denying
no,
that
no.
you
But
said it.
I'm calling his acts heinous and evil. And every time we think, like, during World War One in the church, there was this idea of let's not really talk about sin or the Satan or the
Oh,
devil. And then you get people like Hitler and Stalin, and then a couple of years later, you get people like Pol Pot, and you get people like Kim Jong Un. And I'm not calling them the devil or Satan. That's not what I'm
when
saying.
you mean like evil, when people
But
try
I'm
to deny
talking
that
about
evil exists.
evil,
Yeah, yeah.
evil, which is connected to sometimes literarily this serpent-like behavior.
Right.
And so what I'm saying is it's good to be mindful that there's a long history of this type of stuff, both literarily, in reality, and sometimes if we think, well, this is just kind of stupid. The language is stupid. This really isn't happening. And you started, hold on, you started out with this. This is interesting, especially, I don't mean to call us out on this, but we tend to be more on the liberal or progressive side of most things. And for many years now, I'm not a person of conspiracy theories. I think they're unhealthy. But sometimes things
pan out to
sometimes, not all by any means, but sometimes things to be true. So as soon as we start including stories like these, does that make sense? Are you following where I'm going here?
Yeah.
So it's important, what I'm saying is, it's important to always keep an open mind. The language may change, and maybe it should, but the history of it all and the understanding of it all and where it comes from and how people have interacted with it, need to be not, maybe not at the forefront, but they need to be a part of people's conversations, to be open to what
well yes
new things might come.
Yeah, so this is a podcast about Christian language. And what I find really interesting about my own experience with Christian language is it's the same way for, I mean, how else would it work? So hang with me. As an educator, I know that the way learning works is everybody comes into my classes and they think they have an idea of whatever I'm teaching them, sociology, literature, whatever the classes that I'm teaching them, or the writing process or creative writing. They have a solid idea of what they think it is. They have it's life, it's the death, descent, rebirth thing, right? They have this idea of what something is. I teach them something and their whole worldview crumbles in front of them. I see it happening even with my students today. They're like, what? You're telling me that's not true, or this is true, or like there's another way to look at this thing. I thought this was the only way, right? It crumbles. And then it's my job as an educator to bring it back together and make them more comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the pattern of everything. And there's a lot of confusion in there, but that's the learning process. And that's how I feel as somebody who wasn't raised in the church, but is trying to understand all of this language all of the time. And I study all of this language and I write about all this language, all this stuff. Is I came into Christianity with an idea of what I thought I was getting into. And then over the years, it just crumbles. So I came into Christianity with like that sin talk, that devil person, like evil stuff, get out of here with that. And then I've learned some stuff and I just became, it all crumbled for me. But now I'm rebuilding, like, and now I can use that language, but I have it defined in a way that it clicks for me. And now I can actually confidently say angel, and I can say devil, and I can say demon, and I understand what people are saying now. We all probably have slightly different theologies around it, but I can use that language and I'm in it. But I think where religious people go wrong, and especially Christians, because that is on this earth right now, the dominant religion that has the power, where we go wrong and where people went wrong with me when I was newly interested in this stuff, is that we use that language with outsiders as if it should register to them. Is Tabby's movie over? We're going to be done in a minute. Hold on, Tabby. We're almost done. Dillon, really quick, all I'm saying is I think the mistake is whenever we use that devil, that evil, that snake language with outsiders as if they should understand what we're talking about.
Oh, I totally, yeah.
Yeah, it's giving, whenever people are like, oh yeah, and then mom did the dishes. I can't stand that because it's like, no, your mom, not my mom. You're having a conversation about yourself that is very you-centric. You don't even care about the fact that I'm half of this conversation right now. That is not my mom. That is your mom. Say my mom. Don't say mom is coming over, right? That's what it feels like to me whenever Christians would go around talking about the devil to me before I was even in that community. They'd be like, oh yeah, the devil. It's like, not everybody uses that language the way you're using it. And I think it's important to be aware of who you're speaking to. Where are they at? Some people, I can use that language very clearly because it's a shared community. We know what we're talking about. But other people,
I might get
dangerous.
Yeah, or I might get myself in trouble with this, but I'm a person who has a very low doctrine or low philosophy or low understanding of free will. I think that free will exists, but it's very, very small. But what makes me cringe is when some yeah, and I could name people. I'm not going to, but I could name people that say things like this. Well, the devil or Satan or the serpent did that. Well, we could talk about that and we could parcel that out, but also there's something called personal responsibility and self-control. And there are some things that we're in control about. And to just blame it on kind of an entity that's out there, that you think that it's going out there, we can talk about that. I'm not even denying that. But
It feels like an excuse for complacency.
it feels like an excuse, like, for like systems that are oppressing people and you just kind of sit back and not do anything. No. Uh, because Satan's doing it. I just think,
The Hebrew people trusted God and
yeah,
they crossed the
and
river
took action.
and they did something when they were
Right.
notified it's time to
Yeah,
move.
but basically, and you and I would agree on this, but basically, it's not one or the other. It's the both, and you got to hold them together, and you can't just blame it on
Oh,
the
I have one more thing to wrap up. Yes, you can't
yeah
just blame it on others.
you can't just blame it on others, or you can't just blame it on the serpent in the garden, because
Yes, that's exactly what I was just gonna say. Okay,
uh,
okay, so let's talk about this. I think this is a good way because we started out by talking about politics. Let's end it. And this
I
is
mean, that would be nice if we
yes.
could,
I don't
but
want to lose it. I don't want to lose it. Hold on. Okay, so I feel very strongly right now. I'm part of this community called Letters from Love with Liz Gilbert, and she hopped on. And very long story short, she said, well, I'm just gonna say it. There are so many issues right now. There are women's issues. There are racial issues. There are war issues. There are pedophilia issues. There are other sexual abuse issues, and there are so many things to care about in this world. And I want to start really working on for myself. I've already started practicing this. Can we trust people to have their own relationship with divinity as they know it, and to trust that they can hear and that they will be mobilized in their own way? And what I mean by that is too many people, especially of my political party, are like condemning others because like this is what you need to be doing, right? And that feels like snake stuff to me. That feels like the snake in the garden of like, Eve, come over here. This is what you need to do. You need to do this. I don't want to be told by other people what I should be doing at this moment in time. Especially in my spiritual communities. I want to trust that people at my church, we're doing the work. We're showing up. We're trying to learn together how to decipher the voice of God. And I want to trust that I trust that they know what they're doing and that they're going to hear when they're mobilized. They're going to hear when they're notified that like, this is your work in the world. Go forth and do it. Do you know what I'm saying?
well,
And
yeah.
I feel like that's another thing we can get from the snake in Genesis if we're going to go the deception route of that symbol of like, some people, it might sound like wisdom. They might be trying to tell you like, this is what you need to do. You need to give your money over here. You need to go pick it over here. You need to do this. No, let's just trust that people have a relation, that God is big enough to relate to people and to mobilize people as God sees fit. And that people, yeah, that's it. Let's just trust.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like, yeah. So there are
I think that's
snakes.
I think
And
that's the
really quick, I don't want to be a snake. I don't want to be someone else's snake
well,
telling them, this is what you need to be doing at this moment. We're all working real hard and we're also all really tired. So we all have our spaces, right? And that's okay.
right.
Sorry, I cut you off. I got excited. Anything else to add?
No, yes. We end this podcast with always saying stay curious, and curiosity and learning
My favorite things.
is of God. And many people would twist these stories and say you shouldn't ask questions, you should just do what you're told, you should just trust and obey. And there's it with capital T, trust, trusting the mystery of God and the beauty and the feeling of the reality which millions, if not more, people feel is something beautiful and wonderful. And so you can be curious and not have to fall into chaos.
Yeah.
And it's important to also hold those two things together.
Yeah. Good stuff. Stay curious.
Stay curious.
To understand